Welcome to Uriah Heep, the Magician's Podcast. I'll be covering every studio song the band has recorded and every bonus track that I can find. Each week we'll go over a new song from the beginning to where they are currently, and as they keep adding albums, I'll keep adding shows. Let the deep dive party begin.
In the magic garden, some were singing, some were dancing.
Hello and welcome to another episode of Uriah Heep, the Magician's Podcast. I am your host, Scott Haskin, and we are now entering season 18, covering the album Different World, the 18th studio album of the wonderful band Uriah Heep, that we have been going through their songs for about a year now. It's been an amazing time. I love the fact that the band has endorsed me doing the show. Otherwise, I probably wouldn't be doing it at all. There's a couple that I'm hoping to get endorsed to do down the road, but we shall see. So far, no luck, but time will tell. I'm not giving up quite yet. But we are still going through the studio songs of the band, and while they are in the studio making the newest and 25th album, we're catching up. Got still a ways to go, but we are catching up and catching up quickly. And I have to say, just looking at the album cover of Different World here, it's a really stunning album cover. In the center, we have a round diamond that would have the typical, divots and things that we would expect a diamond to have. But there is a mysterious light source coming from somewhere below the album cover, shining up off the bottom of the diamond. It almost looks like, because of the angle, you can see a face, depending on how your eye catches it. It almost looks like there's two eyes and a mouth. And this thing is actually alive. I don't know if that was intended or just one of those pareidolia experiences, right? Where, the mind sees what things that are familiar to you in objects that really aren't there. Could be, or it could be that was intended. Who knows? But what I really like about this is it's a dark blue background, almost like what I would assume would be the sky. And then inside of that, instead of clouds, we have almost what seems to be like maybe floating sand. There's some brown and some red and some white. There's highlights as the light hits off of it from a completely different angle from the diamond. So that's kind of weird. Maybe there's more than one light source in this world. Very possible. We're talking about something that's a different world, so it could be a number of things. But there's a reflection of the red sand off of one side of the diamond. It's a really interesting album cover, but I love the color combination. I love the overall feel of it. It's really cool. And then in the top middle, we have a very, very well-written Uriah Heep logo. I love that font. And then down at the bottom, a very cool font too, Different World. I don't know how to explain this. The I in different is upside down. The whole thing, all the letters stretch to be the same height, but not all of them are actually that big. So they put like a block underneath of the E's to make them reach the same height. The N is kind of giant compared to the E's. It's a really interesting font. With World, the O is actually very small, but they've put a block down at the bottom of the word, and the O is up at the very top. There's a little bit of space in there. It's a very unique font. I can't think of anything that I've seen that's quite like this. But again, Different World, different font, makes perfect sense, right? Goes along with the same scheme. Very cool. So digging into the album a little bit, it's got a couple of bonus tracks and extended versions that we're going to get into. And the interesting thing about this is the song that we're starting with, which is called Blood on Stone. A couple of notes about this. For one, there was a Blood on Stone double CD best of that was released. This is not related to that per se. Obviously, that was taken from, hey, we have a song called Blood on Stone. That's a great name for a best of album. And so they released it. And it was one that I had, actually. And learned a lot of the songs off when I wasn't listening to, when I wasn't buying up every band's albums. I would just get best ofs and kind of check out, different eras of the band and see where they were. And I did that with a few bands. But now I'm so glad to go back and listen to all the songs that fill in the gaps for me, the ones that I didn't know from the albums that I never heard or never got. And it's just been such an amazing ride doing this show, I'm telling you. But the other thing that's interesting about Blood on Stone is that we have 3 versions of the song. On the deluxe CD, there is the album release version, of course. There is the extended release version, which Normally I'll play the highlights of, which I'll be doing today, and then we have a third version, which was actually the original working title, called "Powers of Addiction," and we're going to play that one too. It does have different lyrics, a slightly different feel to it. The riff is the same, but it's definitely one that's worth playing. So we're going to play through that, and then I'll hit the highlights on the final extended edition. The other thing that is interesting of note on this song is that in the booklet, the people that put the booklet together said that just Mick's guitar playing on this song alone is worth the entire price of the album. So I'm anxious to get into that, to share that with you guys, see how you feel about it. And as we move forward through this new album, new season, welcome. We are making some progress, enjoying every song Uriah Heep recorded in the studio. Now, don't worry. For those of you that are really enjoying the show, those of you guys that write to me all the time and tell me how much you enjoy the episodes, and I appreciate that very much. Don't worry, we have a ways to go. After this is over, I've got a special surprise for you guys. Then we're going to get into the additional bonus tracks that weren't tied to specific albums, at least not as far as I know. We're going to hit some more of those 10 Miles High songs. We got more coming besides just the studio releases that are from the albums and on those deluxe CDs. I have found some more treasures. Not all of them. I'm still hunting a couple of them down that I'm aware of, but for the most part, I've got a good majority of it. So don't worry, guys. We have plenty of show left to do and plenty of episodes to cover for your morning walk, for your commute to work, for whenever you listen to the show. And, you can always go back and listen to other episodes too. If you feel like, going back and hearing the episode I did on The Wizard, we can go back. In fact, I've actually thought about going back and listening to a couple of those earlier episodes and just seeing, maybe how much the show's changed that I haven't realized as I've been doing this. Because like I said, it's been about a year, and I'm sure that there are some different things in there that I did on earlier shows that maybe I'm not doing anymore. Maybe I'm doing things now that I wasn't back then. I really don't know, because for me, the show is just, it develops organically. So I would be curious to go back and do that. But let's get into the first version here of Blood on Stone. This is the album release version. Track 1 from Different World from Uriah Heep. Well, just in the first 13 seconds of this track, I can tell you that this album is starting off on fire. Love it. It's a great riff. Love the power of the keyboards coming in. Great balance with the guitar. A really solid drum sound. And I realized that I didn't introduce the band for this album. Probably should do that. On vocals, we have our returning champion, Bernie. On bass, we have Trevor. On keys, we have Phil. Drums, we have Lee. And on guitar, of course, we have Mick Box, who is the one constant in the band since day one. And they're coming out on fire on this song. Let's see where it goes. Well, right off the bat, I can tell you that I like the sound on this album a little bit better. I do hear some panning and separation. I'm hearing guitar more in the left ear. I'm hearing the keyboards more in the right. The drums seem like they have a little more panning to them. Interestingly, too, this album is listed as being produced by Trevor Boulder. So maybe that's part of some of the changes that we're hearing. I like the sound of it. I think the drums are coming through really good. And I'm having a little trouble hearing what the bass is doing, which is even more interesting because usually, whoever is in charge of it, they want to be heard, but not always. There are plenty of producers that understand proper balance of music. I think that because we're hearing maybe the guitars in a little bit lower range, it's burying in or mixing in with the bass, and I can't hear the bass specifically just yet, but it sounds good overall. Everything's really crystal clear. Bernie's cutting through very nicely. Keyboards can easily be heard. Guitars aren't being muddied up at all. It's got a great sound to it, and the energy of the band on this track is fantastic. It's almost like, hey, we've been wanting to start recording again, and boom, we're going to do it. We're going to give it everything we got. And I love that. I love when a rock album starts out on fire like this. think the thing that's really nice about the backing vocals on this chorus is that they're right where they need to be. They're not over the top. They're not trying to cover too many things. We're in the early 90s now. This album was released in 1991. And we're still holding on to some of those, the way that rock had changed a little bit in the 80s. But I like the backing vocals on this. I think it fits the song very well. And I love Bernie. He's just coming out on fire, singing with all the passion that we're used to hearing from him. I am hearing a little more of the bass now. In fact, overall, I think the mix is a little bit bass heavy, which is why I think some of those frequencies might be blending together a little bit. Lee Kerslake is on fire again, just reinventing himself, playing full on, not distracting to the song though, very complimentary. Very much like I say about Mick's solos and things. When he plays, he's always complimentary to the song. It doesn't kind of go off on these crazy tangents. I have to say very much the same for Lee Kerslake. He was very much a drummer that understood what a song needed and didn't try to overshadow the song. He could play a good fill. I mean, he's kind of flashy sometimes, but not in a way that's like, hey, look at me. More like the song needs something a little bit bigger than a regular drum fill. And I really like that about him. I think he sounds great on this. He's playing very straightforward and then just comes out with some burst of drums that I absolutely love. The keys are nice. They're doing a lot of fill-ins in the background on the organ, especially just that last part that we heard. But really nice fill-ins. The riff is fantastic. The bass has got a great groove to it. It's really a great song. Wow, what a killer solo for Mick. Now I understand what the liner notes were talking about. That was fantastic. It was just full of energy, really powerful. Hit a couple of repeats that just didn't seem to be repeats. I mean, it was repeated, but it just seemed to flow really nicely and fit perfectly. Didn't stay on that for too long. I'm pretty sure I heard a couple of different layers in the solo in there too. I think one had some flange on it, if I'm hearing things properly, or maybe it's just the two. Sometimes when you play two tracks together, they can have a little bit of a flanging effect. So that might have been the case as well. But either way, that was just a fantastic, blistering solo from Mick. It's kind of hard to hear because it really is in the background. And depending on what you're listening through, whether it be earbuds, headphones, car stereo speakers, whatever, you may or may not be able to detect it. But there is an organ track that is in the background that is actually playing a lot of cool stuff. It's handling a lot of those little fill-ins that I always say that I like. And but it's kind of buried in the mix a little bit. In a way, it's cool because it's so subtle. But I think just a touch more volume would be good so that we could maybe notice it depending on what device we're listening on. Now, thinking back in 1991, they weren't thinking about listening devices back then. It was pretty much stereos, cassette players, cassette deck in your car, that sort of thing. They weren't thinking MP3 players, iPods, your earbuds and things like that. I mean, none of those things existed or were even really thought of in 1991. So what we're really looking at is mixing towards cassette and CD release. So things are a little bit muddy here. We've got really heavy bass tone. We've got a good, powerful kick drum, not a real punchy one, but a powerful one. And then I think what we're hearing is in the very far right ear, we're hearing a guitar track. Then just left of center, we're hearing another guitar track. And then I'm hearing some fill-ins that are slightly to the right of center occasionally. And then we've got the keyboards that are coming in too on the right. So but yet it seems balanced. It seems really rich and full, even though most of the stuff that I can identify really seems to be in the right ear. It's really cool the way that worked out. Well, that was certainly a nice twist at the end there. I did not see that coming, and I also didn't see that coming right before a fade. Usually you would do something like that, and then you would have the song, continue on for a little bit. But it was definitely cool, very surprising and unique. Haven't heard an ending like that from the band at all before. So, trying new things, and this one worked for me. Depending on how you guys feel about it, I don't know. But for me, I really like it. I just thought the fade was very fast after that cool little switch there. But I love this whole last section. I mean, there's so much energy, so much drive. The band is just playing at peak performance. They all seem just so together on this whole song. They're all doing their part, but they all seem to be aware of what everyone else is doing because everything that they're adding is very respectful and tasteful to all the other instruments. So I think it's a fantastic song. I could definitely understand why the liner notes we're talking about Mick's playing, because through that whole part, he's doing little fill-ins in the back in the very right side, if you heard it. I was going to do the Power of Addiction version, but I think what I'll do is I'll actually play the extended cuts first, because that actually correlates more to this version than the original version does. So here's the extended opening from the extended version of Blood on Stone. So it's basically the same. It's just a little bit extended out, doing another pass of it, but adding just, a little bit more drama, I guess, or waiting before the vocals start. So for the rest of it, I'm just going to play this part straight through. There are some additions, and it sounds like they just kind of chopped out parts to do the final album version. So I'm just going to play this straight through to the end. It's about 2.5 minutes. And we'll hear some more of that stunning stuff from Mick. Really pay attention to your right ear, where you'll hear a lot of that extra fill-in stuff that Mick was doing. But also keep an ear out just right of center so that you can hear some of that keyboard work that Phil is doing. It's fantastic. I kind of hate that it got lost, because I think he's playing his ass off. And there's some really cool things in there that I think just got a little bit too buried in the mix. If they could have put that maybe a little bit more to the left, it would have stood out more, because you don't want everything in the right ear. That doesn't really make any sense. You'd be walking in a circle all day. Not helpful. So here is the extended cut, or bits of the extended cut mixed in with the regular song of Blood on Stone. Yeah, I mean they're just on fire, and I really don't want it to end. I want to see where it goes after that. I mean, Mick's riffing, there's got just so much power going on here, and drive. I really want to know what happened after the fade, but unfortunately, we don't get to find out. We get what we get, and we just enjoy what we have. We don't worry about what we don't, even though I'm going to worry about it. So yeah, it's a great version of the song. I think there was a lot of great playing in there that they did cut out to do the album version. I don't know if they just thought, 7 minutes, just too much for, for an album track at this point, or they were hoping for maybe some radio playability or some licensing deals that were never going to happen at that length. I don't know. But in any case, that was the version they released, and that was the version they held back, and we get to hear it. And I hope you guys like that extended version. I think there was a lot of cool playing in there. That brings us to the Power of Addiction version, which was the original version. It has completely different lyrics, and it's musically very similar, but obviously, with different lyrics, you're going to have different vocal patterns. It's going to be a little bit different as the band works around that as well. So let's check that out and see what we think of that one, with the idea in mind that this is a demo version, not an official album release. So I'm going to try and not be too hard on the mix. Sometimes these mixes are so good, honestly, that I really do forget we're listening to demo versions. I just think it's another album track because it has a very on par quality, or sometimes a better quality to me than some of the final mixes on the album. So I'll try to keep that in mind. I'll do my best, and feel free to call me out on it if I mess up, because it does happen. Now, see, that was interesting because in the album version, that did not sound like a guitar slide. It sounded like just like a different kind of maybe keyboard patch or something like that. But here it was very definitely a guitar, which is pretty interesting. It could have been a guitar with effects on it too. That a lot of times can mask the tone of the guitar, because it did have a fairly smooth pitch change in there. But this is more defined as guitar. So maybe it's the same performance just without the effect. Okay, so I listened back to that part at the beginning, and it sounds like a guitar and a keyboard at the same time. So, like if you take your pick and put it at the very end of the neck and just kind of slide it down towards the bottom, that's kind of how you get that sound. And then it sounds like there was another keyboard behind that with a sound. So probably the combination of them blended together was a different mix on the actual album version, or some similar combination of, but I'm definitely hearing two things there. Here, this is really interesting because in the album version, we're hearing like a really harsh screeching Hammond on keys. And then we've got here, it's almost like the non-distorted, not quite a church sound, but a very lighter sound with a little more vibrato in it. So it's a complete contrast, although it's playing basically the same thing, but some interesting chords are coming in here. So it's definitely worth listening to. And you can kind of hear it cutting in. It's not very prominent in the mix, but it is there. I think this version equally would have made a great album opener. And the thing is when they're recording it, they probably don't know necessarily that it's going to be the opener. They might say, hey, this one might be good for the opener, but they don't necessarily know, because those are usually decided, after the whole album's done. Let's see what fits together, what order we want to put things in now that we have final versions to listen to, because the feeling of the song and all that can change quite a bit from demo to final sometimes. Here, it really didn't. I mean, we have the same energy. Different story, different lyrics, but we have the same energy in the music, although there are some changes there. But it's either way. I mean, both versions of this are just great hard driving rock songs. Oh man, what a stunning vocal delivery. I mean, so much passion, so much power, and just focus on that voice. It's really amazing.
It's not good enough to finish second best. It's the risk of life or death when you strive to beat the rest. Feel the heat, taste the dust, the sweat is pouring down my head. I've a thirst for speed and a fire in my breath. And I need it, oh so bad. And I love it, the speed, it drives me mad.
What a killer riff. I should have mentioned this before. I just love that riff. It flows so nicely, but it's so powerful at the same time. Really good heavy distortion on the song. Really, bottom-endy guitar too. It really feels, the guitars feel heavier when you put more low end into them, but you're also not missing any of the dynamics in this case either. It's not so low that it's muddy. Everything's very clear. But I love that riff. It just flows so nicely. I always love riffs that do that. They're just almost always in motion. They're not stopping. They're not changing a dynamic that causes you to feel out of the loop of it. It just da 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 da. It's just like one long flowing piece, and I really like that. Great vocal, of course. Really nice keys too from Phil. We're hearing some really good stuff in there. Lee Kerslake is playing at the top of his game once again, even on this demo. And Trevor's solid. He's just solid on the song. There's nothing I don't like about it. Well, being that this is a demo, as I said, there are some differences with the demo versions. That was the backing track, obviously, for what would probably be the guitar solo or keyboard solo, whatever they were thinking at that time. The song took a slightly new direction musically, but mostly lyrically in the final version. So this was basically like the bed that would support the solo, for example. But it's nice to actually be able to hear just how solid and uncompromising it is. It's a freight train that just keeps going. And it's kind of nice sometimes to hear what the backing does clear of the solo. But, I'm a sucker for a good mix solo. So it would have been nice to hear another solo here. Well, it's a vague connection. I realize that it's just my crazy mind, but it just kind of reminds me of Pacific Highway lyrically, that, we got to get there. And while there was no reference to what time of day it was, no, the sun's going down or what point we were at, it just kind of reminds me of that. Like, I want to hurry up and get to this destination, although there's a difference between it's coming, I can't wait to get there, and we've got to get there. Obviously, there's a much larger sense of urgency in the song, but lyrically, it just kind of reminded me of that. I wonder if that was part of maybe why it changed.
Waiting for the green light. We're headed
Well, we didn't get the same twist at the end of this one before the fade, but that's okay. That was on the final version and may not have been thought of at the time that they did this recording. I have to say, I think, honestly, this one really stands on its own. I think if the solo had been in there, I think that this track would have worked just fine. So I would be curious to know why lyrics were changed. Maybe at some point we'll get to find that out. I can't reach out to the band at this point because they're in the studio, but I certainly think it's an interesting concept. I think this song was great. I do like the final version. I like the extended version. I agree with the book. I think the extended version should have been on the album. But, you know, those decisions are made typically from a corporate level, not a creative level. There's so many factors that are involved. It could have been most likely, you know, just somebody coming in like a producer just saying, you know what, the song's too long. Now, that was produced by Trevor, but I'm sure he wasn't the only one that had input on it. So I don't know. It's a cool song both ways. I think I like all the versions. I think they all have merit. I think they all rock and they're great. All of them would be great album openers, and they definitely chose a powerful song to kick this one off. So kudos to the band on this one. Great start to our new season 18 for Different World. Can't wait to get to the next one. You guys have a fantastic weekend. Do something fun. You know, it's fall season. Depending on where you are in the world, that might be unpleasant or that might be extremely pleasant. Us here, we love mid-October. We're kind of done with those triple digits and we're starting to feel the holidays coming. Halloween is actually Nevada Day here, so that's its own holiday. We don't really get anything for it. It doesn't really do a lot for us, but it is considered a holiday. Good times here. I love this season. You know, candy corn, caramel apples, all the sugar that I shouldn't have, you name it. It's all good. But you guys have a great weekend. Do something great for yourself. Do something great for somebody else. It just takes a moment. Cheers. Thank you for joining me on this episode of Uriah Heep, the Magician's Podcast. If you have enjoyed this show, please consider going over to Apple Podcasts or your favorite podcast outlet, leaving a rating or a review. Be sure to subscribe to make sure that you are notified when new episodes are available. Please be sure to share this podcast with your fellow Uriah Heep enthusiasts and anyone who you think would like Uriah Heep, which should be everyone. And if you are so inclined, please feel free to contribute to the Patreon account. And if you are not a Patreon subscriber, you can also pay through the PayPal link on the website listed in the show links below. I would also like to thank Uriah Heep for their very generous support of the show, and thank you guys for listening. We'll see you in the next episode. Happy days!